Wrong one. See, technology is technology. Hey, good afternoon, good morning, good night, everybody. This is Real Estate Talk, TGIF, episode 261. It's 258 weeks in a row. And we are honored today to have two of my new favorite people, Colin, Coggins, and Garrett Brown. They are authors of this great book, as you can see on the screen, The Unsold Mindset. I first heard about this book from a friend of mine, Ruth Katchen from Colorado, who was associated with Lab Coat Agents. And she told me about this and said she was real excited about this book, that I should read it. And she was going to be talking to you guys. And I read it, and then I read it again. And then this week, since you guys were going to be on, I've actually been obsessed with it and going through different things that were really cool. And I'll probably going to forget 3/4 of the things that I saw that I read was really cool. But I want to thank you guys for coming on. Let's go to a quick video. Nelson, hit it.
Real estate agents, are you looking to acquire clients consistently to grow your business and income for a great lifestyle? Well, this is Dave Finale, and I'm here to bring you the Real Estate Skill Builder broadcast, Real Estate Talk TGIF, brought to you by Real Estate Skill Builder and the Modern Agent team.
Hey, everybody. Again, this is Real Estate Talk TGIF, brought to you by the Modern Agent team and the Modern Agent experience. If you're looking to grow your business through prospecting, we do it every week. And if you go to the modernagentexperience.com, you can register for that event. It's an in-person event in Teaneck, New Jersey. Colin, Garrett, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You know, we get started with this, and I always love to know where people came from and how they started. I mean, you know, your book tells your story a bit on how you got started and what you did. And I'd like to hear you guys talk about, you know, your journey to where we are today.
What a journey, huh?
It's been a fun one. Yeah. I guess let's not bore them with our individual journeys, Colin. You want to take the lead on our journey, and we can have some fun?
Yeah. You know, where do we start? We'll start closer to the end. So Garrett and I have been practitioners and have held every leadership job in sales you can think of in tech over the last 2 decades. And we met at a software security identity access management company in Santa Monica, California. We sort of had this like very weird interview process, right? Where like we vibed initially on the exact opposite of what most people would expect from, an interview, right? Like where like Garrett was sitting there and I was in the same room and we were talking about why the greatest salespeople on the planet were the opposite of who people thought they were. And so Garrett was, he came from a legal background and he was a CRO and he was the only, he was the only revenue generator, I guess you could say, right? Like for the company in the beginning. And as he needed to scale and really start to mature and create like a sales org, he brought me in and we made a deal that if we were going to do this, we were going to do it together and we were going to do it through the lens of who we thought the greatest sales team could look like. And that was a sales team that wasn't predicated on self-confidence, but on self-awareness. And so we started like digging in deep and started having real conversations. And long story long, that worked. And that company ended up getting acquired by Google. And that's when academia just started to be a conversation that kept bubbling up. We started doing guest lectures everywhere. And these colleges were asking us to teach this palatable sales approach. And eventually we found a home at USC. We couldn't be happier. We've been teaching the only sales mindset for entrepreneurship class, I think, in the world, as of today.
As we know, yeah.
We've done it for, 11 semesters now?
We are coming up on our 11th. Yeah, we've done it for 5 years. Just like this show, Dave.
The show, 2 weeks will be 5 years. So guys, I mean, you say in the book, and you talk about in the book about how when people come into your class, they're getting something they're not expecting.
Yeah.
Right. You're talking about the unsold mindset, working with sellers of different backgrounds and different methodologies. And what is probably what is the strangest comments you've gotten when you start your class?
Yeah, well, like Colin said, the title of the class is Sales Mindset for Entrepreneurs. And we teach at the Greif Center for Entrepreneurship at USC, which ostensibly everybody in the class is either majoring in entrepreneurship or minoring, or at least has an interest in starting their own business. And so they see the word sales in class and they think that it's going to be a sales class about handling objections and building rapport and asking for the close and all the typical things that you would learn in a sales training. And they find out really quickly, literally in the first class, that that's not what this is about, because we genuinely believe that let's put it this way. Everybody has access to the same training, the same books, the same podcasts, the same information about how to sell. And yet in any organization, whether you're a realtor, whether you're a tech salesperson or anything else, when we go in, it's almost always 20% of the people are thriving and the other 80% are still trying to figure things out. They're trying to figure out why the 20% are doing better than they are. And to us, the reason that we believe that is the case is because the greatest sellers in any room are the ones that think differently. They're not successful because of what they do. They're successful because of what they think. So we start talking about things that are related to mindset, a lot of the stuff that we write about in our book. And it's not the building rapport and the overcoming objections that people think it is. So they get kind of weirded out. And they realize really quickly, the biggest compliment that we get every semester is somebody will say, this isn't a sales class, it's a life class. And we love that because we genuinely believe that if you're thinking about selling as if you're thinking about anything else that you're trying to learn or grow through, then you're probably doing things the right way.
And to put it bluntly, that's why the class got so popular. The class became really popular because people figured out that people were showing up for class because they wanted to learn how to sell themselves. They wanted to figure out how to build relationships. They wanted to figure out how to create agency in people that wanted to fight for them. They wanted to learn how to sell ideas. Like 2/3 of the class weren't showing up because they wanted to be sales professionals. They were showing up because they figured out that in order to be a professional, in order to change anybody's world, you have to figure out how to move people. So that idea, when Garrett says life class, that's what became really popular. Right. That's when HarperCollins came and they were like, this book hasn't been written before. This is an interesting book. So when we signed the book deal, and the class got popular, it wasn't because we were teaching people how to sell better. We were teaching people how to think better about selling, and that made them phenomenally better salespeople.
So you mentioned the 20% and the 80%. Well, 80-20 is something we've talked about for years and years and years. Mm-hmm. Is it still 80-20? Is some salespeople 90-10? Is it still relatable?
Sure. It's a generalization for sure, but we haven't done the math and run the numbers that it's exactly 80-20, but there is definitely a smaller percentage of people that are thriving in any setting or organization than there are people who are just like, oh, I might have a good month and then I slow down and then I have a good month and then I'm slow for a quarter. That is generally the case across the board.
And Dave, take this audience, for example. I don't know how many people are going to watch this. Right. There's a bunch of people that are going to watch this. All of them are consuming the same exact content. Okay. However, there's a certain percentage of them that are going to take this and thrive. They're going to take ownership of it, and they're going to do special things with what they hear on this episode. And you're going to have a certain segment that heard it, knew it, didn't need to listen to it anymore, been there, done that, or consume it differently. And so what we've seen over the years is that this 80-20 rule that Garrett's alluding to, in businesses, and it could be 60-40, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Outside of a sales room, it's the difference between learners and knowers. The ones that are thriving, the smartest people in any room are the people that don't want to be the smartest people in any room. So when you're consuming this content, your people are going to listen to this and they're going to think, how can I apply this? Where am I doing this wrong? How have I done this in the past? And then you're going to have some people that are just going to go, yep, okay, I know how to act like this now. I know this versus I want to go and learn how to do this. We've seen that be the ultimate sort of qualifier between doing good consistently and faking your way through it until getting caught or found out.
Right. I believe personally, from my own senses, I've always had, we can talk about prospecting, right? And the idea is, I would like to call this book, The Unsold Mindset, The Art of Being Real, right? I think it's one way to look at it, right? And I think that's the hardest thing in the world, because when we hear the word sales, we think, okay, we got to be cheesy, we got to be corny, and we've got to convince these people to work with us, right? Mm-hmm. And I think part of the call reluctance that I see in real estate agents every day is they just don't understand how they can do that. They don't understand how to be real and yet salesy at the same time. What would you guys say to that?
I think it's a super valid point. It's why the book is called The Unsold Mindset, because I don't think we mentioned this at the beginning, but when we set out to write this book, we set out to write a book about the mindset of the greatest sellers on the planet, the greatest salespeople on the planet. We thought we were going to go out and talk to great salespeople who had identified as salespeople and figure out what it was that made them great. And then at the end of every interview, we started asking them a question. We started saying, who's the greatest salesperson you know? When we say a great salesperson, who do you think of? And they would give us names of people that were not salespeople. They were giving us the names of actors and authors and military generals and all these other people that are featured in the book. And we quickly realized that, it's almost a cliche at this point to say that everybody sells, because you're selling yourself, you're selling ideas, you're selling products, but it's true. And we started to realize this. And so when we had conversations with all of these other quote unquote non-sales people about the selling that they do every day, that's when we started to realize that they all sound the same. And we call the book The Unsold Mindset, because all of these people were unsold on what selling is quote unquote supposed to be. Like you say, when we go into a selling situation, we think we're supposed to sound a certain way, and we think we're supposed to have all the answers, and we think we're supposed to sound really slick. These people were completely unsold on that and did things the opposite way, did things in a way that is authentic to them, not necessarily the same as anybody or everybody else, but something that they were comfortable with versus what the book that's not this book tells them they're supposed to do.
And Dave, I want to answer your question even more directly than that, because that's great. A great example, Garrett. A lot of people just don't realize that who someone expects you to be and who someone hopes you are aren't always the same person. Right. So like these real estate agents that you're talking about that sometimes have a hard time towing the line between authentic and being in sales, right? As if they're mutually exclusive, right? Like there are people in this book that have cracked the code by figuring out that who the world expects them to be, right? Buttoned up, knowledgeable, high baseline etiquette, right? Or, manipulative, pushy, whatever those adjectives are, right? Like, that might be who they expect you to be, but who they hope you to be is a real one. Who they hope you are is just like them, right? Like great salespeople do a really good job at making sure that the people they're talking to see themselves in you. So like the fastest way to do that is just to show someone how imperfect you are. Like immediately, like I will race you to showing you I'm a real one by just showing you I'm just like you. Like I'm here, I'm figuring it out. I have good days, I have bad days. I'm imperfect, I'm authentic. How can I just show this to you? Like it's not just like authenticity, it's hyper authenticity. They're giving themselves permission to show people a side of them that most people intentionally think they're supposed to hide in their profession. But then you meet somebody and it's like 5 seconds and you're like, oh, I see it. Like I see me in you. I was, at Bidium, I was engaged to my now wife of 9 years, which is crazy to say that. But like I was engaged and my wife is a really big wedding planner and she would take up a lot of my shared calendar time. So I would show up late to meetings sometimes, right? And like, I'm the boss. I'm supposed to be like there. I'm supposed to be closing. I'm supposed to be helping out my AEs and I would be embarrassed. And I'd show up to the meetings late and I'd say, hey, I'm really sorry. I have this fiance. She's taking wedding planning really seriously. Today was a conversation about tulips and bougainvilleas. You know what? Doesn't matter. Like, you don't need to know that. I'm just saying I'm sorry. And almost every time the reciprocation would be undeniable. Like people would either say one of two things. They'd go, Colin, we totally get it. It's going to be way easier on your second marriage. Like, these are real quotes, Dave. Or Colin, don't worry about it. Like I've been married for 30 years, like happy wife, happy life. I'm catching like marital history in the first 10 seconds of like a sales call. Like I'm not losing that deal. Like that, but they were seeing themselves in me. That's what happened, right? Like these were people that have been married before. Like it just took me 5 seconds to show them I was imperfect for them to be like, oh, that's absolutely right. Like who I am. I was a married person. I was, I had a fiance at one time. And those are things like you want to start looking at great salespeople that ask phenomenal questions. Like look at great salespeople that view the people they're talking to differently. So you're right, the whole real one, but there's so many tentacles to that realness. It all starts with like just being okay, like knowing that the perfect person is actually really horrible. Like that gut feeling when you're like, oh, I don't know why I don't trust this person, but I don't. It's because they're too damn perfect. And if you're too perfect, we don't like it because it's impossible to be perfect.
Yeah, perfection's not a thing. I mean, it's like this dream or this illusion that we all are going after. I do with work with a lot of different agents, and I call it the getting ready to get ready syndrome, right? Where everybody they can't start doing anything. Well, it's not ready yet. I got to do this, and I got to have this. It's like, just I like to say, just you need to get over that and just do it. I don't care if it's 20% done, just do it. But a lot of people can't do that. How would you advise someone like that to just get into the flow?
What, just like if you're going to fail at going 100 miles an hour?
Yeah.
Garrett and I have this rule. Making mistakes is your job. Like we tell our students that, like we tell our clients that, like in any roles that we've ever been in, like make mistakes. Like we hope you make 1,000 mistakes. Like that means you're doing your job. And if you make the same mistake twice, that means you're not doing your job.
Yeah. So we look at it like, okay, so in our daily work, we say, make a mess and clean it up to progress, right? Just make that mess, make the mistakes. It doesn't matter. It's like someone doing a video. I hate doing video. I hate the way I sound. I hate the way I look. Well, unfortunately, that's the way you sound. That's the way you look. And here's the thing: do the video and just put it out there. Don't even look at it.
Yeah, and this touches on one of our favorite concepts to teach. It's something that's in the book. It's something that we talk about in our class, and it's really relevant for the real estate world, which is celebrate the process. And when we say celebrate you'll hear a lot of people say, fall in love with the process. And that's great. When we talk about celebrating the process, we genuinely mean find a way to celebrate, whether it's a literal, the way Colin and I do it, where we go to a bar and we have a celebration, or whether it's just giving yourself a little bit of credit in your head. But don't just celebrate the wins. Don't just celebrate the house you sold or the deal you closed. Celebrate the entire process. So when you fail, when you have these lessons that we're talking about, find a way to celebrate those, because like Colin said, you now have this tool in your tool belt and you are not going to make that same mistake again. That is worth celebrating. And so in an industry like real estate, where there are highs and lows and ebbs and flows, if you are just waiting for that prolonged gratification of celebrating the win, celebrating the closed deal, there are times, as a lot of people listening to this know, where you're going to be waiting a long time. And that's when people burn out. And that's when people get frustrated. And the worst thing, at least as far as Colin and I are concerned, is that's where people start to become the salesperson that they don't want to be. They start to press and they start to, say what they think the person wants to hear, or make up facts, or whatever the case may be. That stuff happens. But if you are celebrating the process, and if you are finding a win every single day, not just the day you get the deal, but the day you learn the lesson because, oops, I said something that I shouldn't have said at that point in time, or whatever the lesson is, now you've got prolonged gratification, or you've got prolonged gratification. You're not just waiting for that delayed gratification.
Yeah. It's a hard concept to like understand unless you live through it. But the great news is that we've all lived through it. Like we've all gone through the shit, pardon my French, and then look back and been like, oh, that was actually the best part of the movie. You know what I mean? Like we just didn't know it in that moment. And when you think about like these concepts about celebrating the process, it took me 3 years to buy this house. Like not this house, but like my first house, which is this house. 3 years. Not for any other reason than it's just a long sales cycle. So like, if it's a long sales cycle, is my real estate agent only supposed to be happy once every 3 years? Maybe he's got a great pipeline. Okay. And sales cycles are a year long. That still means like he is going to be unhappy for a certain stretch of time. Or what about the people that say no? I mean, if you're a 30% closer, you're making really good money and like helping people and adding a ton of value. That means if someone's saying no to you 7 out of 10 times. So like, you're going to hate your life 70% of the time. Like that's and like there's way too much science and research on like the burnout and the outcomes of that burnout when it comes to salespeople, and it's real. You know what I mean? Everything from the alcoholism and the depression, like it's a hard sport. It's a beautiful one, right? It's like it can be, but it's hard. Like if you don't distinguish the difference between goals and purpose. Like if you're not enamored with the people that you're working with, if you don't understand the pieces of your job that you would do for free, like all that, like this is a mindset conversation. Like the people that we talk to, the hitters, like they just think differently, but they're doing the same thing. So
yeah, it's you talk about 70%. Really, when people are making prospecting calls, we believe that it's 90% no. Like if they talk to 100 grandmothers of theirs, 90 of them would still say no, right? Where they're going to get like 3 yeses and 7 not yets.
Right.
It's the, I mean, I don't know if it's grit, I don't know if it's grind, I don't know if it's callousness or what it has to be, because you have to, I think you have to, when working with salespeople, at least for me, is I've got to figure out a way for them to understand that no is not a bad thing. You know, I know there's a book out there called Go for No, and I've read it, but you know, it's just still difficult. I mean, it is rejection, right?
Yeah.
It is. It's absolutely rejection, and it's hard. There's a lot of books about this, and there's a lot of TED Talks about this, and it's important stuff. But it's hard not to take rejection personally, and that's goes back. Like Colin talked about the science, and we can sit here and do a whole episode on the science. But like we are, because of the evolution of humans, we are innately trained to take rejection personally, because there was a point in human history where if you were rejected, you died because you were not part of the group and you were out in the cold, and the saber-toothed tiger got to eat you for dinner. Like, so it's in there, and it is really hard to reprogram that. And celebrating the process is one of many ways that you can sort of train yourself to shift your mindset and reframe what it means to get told no.
It's
might be resilient. No, I was just going to say, like, you were pointing out like grit and resilience. Like it might be, we call it pathological optimism because we were trying to find thriving pessimists. Like we were, you know what I mean? Like we interviewed a bunch of people and we were looking for different use cases and a whole bunch of different verticals. We couldn't find one. We found really authentic pathological optimists. We found like real pathological optimists. We found conservative pathological optimists. But like when you talk to somebody who you assume, right, is going to look for the good in you, who is going to believe in you or your product. Like when you walk into conversations like with that assumption, like we all know what it feels like to have a conversation with someone that doesn't want to take something from you. Like salespeople don't realize it. Like we smell that shit a mile away. Like you're coming here and all you're doing is trying to extract value. Like even when you ask questions like tell me, show me, give me, right? It's like some of the greatest salespeople in our book figured out how to add value by asking questions.
It's all about the questions though, isn't it?
I think it starts, I think the right side of the equal sign is it's all about the questions. The left side of the equal sign is like, who is it? Like, what is it that makes a great person ask a great question? Because you can't be asking leading questions. Like you can't ask questions that you actually already know the answers to, because we'll smell that a mile away and we're expecting that from you. Like we hope you care enough. We hope you care differently enough to ask us a question we might not have ever heard before. Like if you ask me a question that I've never heard before for the first time in real time, I will ideate on that answer. And whatever that answer is, it's my answer. I own it. You didn't sell me on anything. I bought that answer. It came out of my mouth. But like that process isn't interesting unless you show up and you want to know something about me that most people have never cared to know. And that's a real vibe. Like I know I'm looking at the clock and I want to be weary, but like there's a section in the book where we talk about the Bob Dylan guy. And like the quick story is like, it's a consulting client of ours, back in the day, great salesperson in the room, really mature gentleman, didn't want us there. There was a bunch of other people in the room that needed us there, but he was doing fine. His numbers were fine. He didn't need us there. And so we were telling the group, we were like, hey, look, some of the greatest salespeople on the planet do one thing really well more than others, which is they figure out a way to fall in love with the people they're going to talk to. And, you could see this guy like sucking his teeth, right? Like, oh, great. Now they're telling us to fall in love with clients. So we ask him, we're like, hey, do this. We're going to give you a lead. Just take 3 minutes and find 3 things that you could love about this person. And like, he gives us shit. And then he's like, I'm not going to do it. And we're like, please just do it. He's like, you don't get it. It's not even a qualified lead. And it wasn't. So we were like, fine, do the 3-minute exercise. We'll give the lead to somebody else. He starts typing on his computer. He's in LinkedIn. He's looking this lead up and you hear him like physically, like he's like, huh? And we're like, what? And he's like, this person graduated college around the same time I did. And we're like, you love that? And he's like, no. Keeps typing. What? The second, this person went to the University of Minnesota. Did you go to do you love? No, I don't love the University of Minnesota. Like, all right. And then right when he's about to put his fingers back down, he looks back up and he goes, but I do love Bob Dylan. He did go to the University of Minnesota and he is around my age. And you watch the whole room see what the mindset shift immediately. Like what happens like when you find 3 things that you could love about someone. Because when we said, thank you, we're going to give this lead to a rookie now, right? This unqualified lead. There was no way. He was like, I'm not going to give you this lead. Let's figure out if this dude actually knew Dylan. Let's figure out like he gets on this call. It's a bro fest. I'm not proud of it. I'm just saying I've never seen a bro fest like it. Like they love the same things. They're fascinated with each other's journeys. They were both Dylan fans. The person buys. Okay. And this guy was asking questions about cherry orchards that no one else would have ever asked. And at the end of it, the salesperson comes back into the room and he's like, hey, I just want to let you all know that person did not buy because I fell in love with them. And, they bought because it was a product and there was a fit, blah, blah, blah. And Garrett and I laughed and we looked at him and we were like, yeah, it totally makes sense. Except you just told this entire room like an hour ago that you are never even going to take this lead. Like you want to talk about great salespeople. Like they're the one, like, well, how do they sell the unsellable? Because they see opportunity where nobody else does. And so this was just an example of that. And this is a exercise. Garrett's always like, let's make sure that we leave some actionable deliverables when we're talking. Like that's an exercise. You're about to go meet a prospect. I dare you to find 3 things that you could love about this person in 3 minutes. Just to figure out the questions that you need answers to figure out if you're right or not. But that changes how you show up.
That's exactly it. When we talk about this mindset stuff, the biggest shift that people notice when they start taking actions like spending 3 minutes to fall in love is that their interactions change. They move differently. They sound different. They ask different questions because when you are like this person who was excited to talk to this person about Bob Dylan and the University of Minnesota, that conversation with him armed with that information and knowing that he had something that he genuinely wanted to ask about and learn about, it's going to sound a whole lot different than if that was just another name on a list that he had been handed one morning and said, hey, call these 10 people. You're going to sound so different when you get into that mindset. And that is one of a million reasons why Colin and I get really excited about this mindset stuff is because it really can change the conversations that you're having.
Mm-hmm. What about the salespeople that, you tell them, okay, so you have to love the process. You have to embrace the process. You have to celebrate the process. And they right away say, well, I need to get this sale or I need this or I need that. Is it about eliminating the thought of need? Or is it about is it just about loving what you do and how you do it?
I think it's realer than that. During the book writing process, we did a lot of interviews. And one of the key areas, like a chapter that we knew was going to make it in the book was about goal setting. Because all great salespeople are really good at goal setting. Like you ask a room, raise your hand if you set goals, the whole room raises their hand. And so when we embarked on this journey and we started asking, people like, hey, tell us about your goal setting process, your goal orientation, like almost all of them figured out a way to like answer that question with the word purpose, which was really weird because we weren't asking about purpose. In fact, purpose was not part of our sales process. Goals were, but they were intentionally shoehorning the word purpose in and not over indexing on goals. And we figured out over time, as we started asking these questions, it was intentional because like how many times do we achieve a goal and then we just sit there and we go, I thought this was going to feel different, or like, oh, is this it? It's like, it's that chase, right? It's like, it's never enough. Like always chase, always going to the next thing. It's never enough. And that sense of urgency and like your back's against the wall. And even when you get it, right? Like, what happens on January 1st or February 1st or March 1st? It's like, what have you done for me lately? That's the sort of sport this is. So what we were finding was that people were like regular, normal, mediocre salespeople were viewing goals as finish lines. But these elevated salespeople were viewing goals as mile markers because they had a purpose defined and that purpose was a finish line. So like they, when you ask the question, like what happens when you just got to get a deal and you got to get a deal, like, and your back's against the wall, there's urgency. It's because like you're trying to get to the finish line. But like if you wake up every single day and like what you're trying to do is get a lot closer to that purpose and like you hitting your goals moves you closer to that purpose, that's just a different conversation with yourself. Right. And then therefore you're showing up differently. And look, not to derail this too much and sound woo-woo, but purposeful people they're one of those like real recognized real situations. Like you want to walk into a room and like you've got that magnetic person in the middle and everyone's gravitating towards them and everybody thinks that they have a special relationship with them, even though like everyone thinks the same thing. Like, who is that person? That person is normally purpose driven, and they see their purpose in people. Like, we see our purpose in you. Like, we just met you, right? But like, you're helping us serve our purpose. Why wouldn't we like catch a vibe with you? Look for the good in you, believe in you. So like, when a person does that to people because they see their purpose in them, that's just that natural magnetic energy. The only other thing that we've seen purpose do really well, which was like a surprise to us, is a purpose-driven person recognizes a purpose-driven person. You know, so like you have these conversations with people and you see them catch vibes earlier than most other people. And that's just because you know what it feels like to have written a purpose statement.
That's all really good. And I'll add that Colin and I have both been quota carrying salespeople. We've both had situations where we need to sell in order to put food on the table, to pay the rent, to pay the mortgage, to take the vacation we want to take. And so we realize that it's hard, and that's saying, okay, define your purpose, figure that out, tie that to your goals. We know that works, but we also know that just hearing that, especially if you're in the shit and you're in that moment right now where you need to close a deal, that can be hard to hear. So right. One of the things, the only thing I'll add to that, which is because I agree with everything Colin said, is that it's like a muscle. You still have to stay in the gym and you still have to work on it. And it's hard to do in the moment, but the more that you focus on these mindset things and you create your purpose and you celebrate the process and you look for the good and you fall in love with your clients, the more that you do that over time, you're able to do it in the moment. And there's science behind this as well about this repetition and the fact that the distance between the moment of having the negative thought of, oh, I'm about to do this, and course correcting because of these mindset techniques shrinks over time so that you're able to do it on the snap. So I just wanted to point that out, that we realize that as we say these things, it's not always easy to do in the moment, but if you do them long enough and over time, we promise they will work.
I want to stay here for a second. I want to stay in the shit conversation because I think the answer to that question is a different one. You know, like here's the story from the book that answer this question about like what happens like when you're in the shit and you have to like get a deal and your back's against the wall and like it sucks and like you have to put food on the table, right? And you have decisions to make, like how you're going to do that. I had a number one salesperson in a room come up to me and tell me that the rookie that I had hired was hoarding leads. Okay. And she would say like, this guy would like show up like in the morning before everybody else. And he would be prospecting into like the East Coast. Right. By the time she showed up, like there was nothing in all the hot territories like San Francisco. She said when she left at night, he'd still be there prospecting into Australia and prospecting into Sydney, right? And so in Melbourne, and she made a joke like, unless you want me prospecting in the Outback, like she was very serious. Like he's hoarding leads. He's just continuing to look and then putting them in his the CRM under his name.
Right.
So I said, you know what? You're right. I'm going to go and have a conversation with the rookie. Call the rookie into the office. Hey, I want to talk to you about something. He sits down on this couch. We have this like brown Restoration Hardware. It's a nice couch. He sits down on the couch and I'm like, so look, I want to talk to you about something. As I open my mouth, he's doing this. He's rubbing his butt back and forth on the couch. Like the weirdest thing. We're all weird if we admit that we're sellers. But this was like weirder than weird. He's rubbing his tuchus back and forth on the couch. I stop. I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, this is a really nice couch. I go, okay. All right, so look, here's what I want to talk to you about. As I open my mouth again, he stands up, flips over the couch cushions until he finds the tag of who made this couch. Puts the couch cushion back down, opens up the laptop. He's like, these people have 5,000 employees. Like, I'm sure they're using cloud apps. Like, you care if I call them like after this, prospect into them? And like, I'm sitting there in awe and I'm like, no, I don't care. Feel free. Closes his laptop, puts it aside. Okay, what do you want to talk about? And I looked at him dead in his eyes and I was like, absolutely nothing. This dude found deals in couch cushions. right? Like this is a conversation about abundance versus scarcity. We don't have time for, but like if you want to see real prospectors, real hitters, they're the ones that find opportunities where nobody else does. I had the number one salesperson in the room tell me there weren't enough leads. I had this dude walk into my office and find a deal in a couch cushion. He would text me picture. He was a rager. He used to like drive to Vegas every weekend. He would send me pictures of big rigs that no one had ever heard of, the names plastered on the side, and tell me like the firmographic information of the company and how excited he was to prospect into it. So when you when you think like that, when you see opportunities, when you know, like we do deal swarms all the time where like deals are stuck in the pipeline. We pull in engineering and we pull in marketing, we pull in ops, we pull in strategy. Tell us what you think about this sales situation. Like when you start to see opportunities in places where people see no opportunity, that's when you win. And when your back's against the wall, when you're in the shit, that's when you have to think like that. How can I get creative? Right? How can I be sincere? How can I be authentic? How can I find opportunities to create urgency? Not how can I show up and be an asshole and be the salesperson I never wanted to be and ask someone to take action when they're probably still in the comprehension phase of the sales process. That's a whole nother conversation.
Absolutely. It's like I was mentioning to Garrett before you came on today about, I thought I did a lot of preparation for this. And then, I have all these things I want to say. And then I'm just like, I'm lost. I'm just like, wow. Okay. And a lot of stuff, some of the stuff I've heard before from you guys and watching your stuff and listening to your stuff. And just, a brief shout out to Ruth Katchen, who's watching this broadcast now for introducing us. And I want to thank her for that. But, you talk about being creative and looking for deals and whatever. And you have a chapter on creativity, right? Which is one of my favorites in the book, and just talking about being creative and remembering what you used to do. And it really hit me hard when I read the part about, is the education system hurting our creativity? Because when we get to third or fourth grade, it's like, stop, do this, they say, people say, well, dance like no one's watching. I say like dance and talk like a 4-year-old because they don't give a shit. Right. And I love that. And people get pissed at me.
That's a better T-shirt, Dave.
Like that one? Yeah.
No, I said that's a better T-shirt than just the standard dance like no one's watching. I like yours better.
Oh, absolutely.
when you send us our hats, make sure you send us those tees too.
I gotta get those hats, those T-shirts done. But when we're talking about creativity, I mean, there's creativity in everything we're doing, and it helps me, and because when I'm talking to agents, like we have sessions, and the agents, we're all in the room making phone calls. I'm calling real estate agents. They're calling for sale by owners or expires or what. And one of the things that makes us a little bit different is that we'll go up to the agents and we'll listen to what they're saying, and we'll say, okay, this, that, and the other thing. And then what happens is, I mean, you made me be more creative. And I get excited about making the call, and I can start being more me than I've ever been. Like, be that 4-year-old and not give a shit what you say. I mean, I don't like when people hang up on me, and I might tend to text them and say that was rude. But, I mean, I'm waiting for the response. I haven't gotten one yet. I'm not sure too much that I care if they were rude or not, But talk to me about being creative in your sales.
I'm glad you're bringing this up because it is one of my favorite chapters that we wrote, because, you talk about the traits of a great salesperson or a great seller in any scenario, and creativity is almost never on the list.
Right.
Which is weird because all of these amazing sellers that we talk to, whether they were salespeople or not, were so creative. And part of it, yes, is that we're taught, whether it's in school or just in the process of going through life or at work, that this is how you do things. This is the lane, color in the lines. And that's what this means. This is what it means to sell real estate. You do this, this, and this, and you don't do anything else. But all of these people would give us examples of things that they did in a selling situation that were so unique. And they realized that creativity doesn't mean artistic necessarily. It doesn't mean that you're creating some kind of masterpiece, or that you're doing something, that's the traditional definition of creative. It just means doing things differently in a way that you're not expected to do, or you're not quote unquote supposed to do. And so they would do things like, I was just talking with somebody yesterday or the day before about this salesperson that Colin and I write about in the book, where they used that they were trying to get a hold of a prospect. They had spent weeks trying to get a hold of what they thought was their ideal prospect. And they used Cameo, which for anybody listening or watching that's not familiar, it's this tool online. You can go in and you can pay people to create videos for you. And it's celebrities of varying degrees and athletes and all kinds of different stuff. And so this person realized that they weren't getting the response they wanted. They knew, because they had done the research and fallen in love with this person, that they were a huge fan of, I think it was the University of Texas football team. So they went on Cameo and they found a former University of Texas football star and had him make a little video that said, you know, hey, so-and-so is trying to get a hold of you. You should take their call. It's really simple, 30-second video, send it off in an email, and they got a response immediately. And that was one of 100 examples that we got in our conversations where we're just like, this is so simple and yet so creative. They're taking a tool that every single salesperson has access to, every one of their competitors has access to, but they're thinking about it in a new, creative way and using it to accomplish the goal that they had for themselves. And we thought so that when we talk about creativity and selling, we're not talking about, you know, earth-shattering, change the world stuff necessarily. It could be something as simple as changing the way you think about the tools you have available to you and using them differently than everybody else.
And it could change the world, right? Because like teachers are some of the greatest sellers.
Oh, absolutely.
Creativity, like a teacher, like getting my 7-year-old to read, like it takes a lot of creativity, you know, and the tutor that we have on him right now, like love him, like watching him sell my kid on reading is art. The same way watching Jeff Aroff sell an entire MTV generation that unplugged on plugging back in and signing up for Rock the Vote is art. You know, watching there's so many examples in the book of creative selling. You just don't call it sales. And that's the problem, is if you called it sales and you could give yourself permission. But when you don't call it sales, you just end up in a situation where you know you're in a sales situation, you're uncomfortable. So you try to act like whatever the perfect version of yourself is, like for that situation. But if you knew it was a selling situation and you knew that like the greatest salespeople on the planet were the opposite of who people thought they were, and they were hyper authentic and vulnerable and all these things we were talking about, the minute you identified it as a selling situation, you could show up as the realest version of yourself instead of the most perfect version of yourself.
So is there a difference in sales between creativity and cleverness? Or is that corny? Cheesy.
It feels like it's just semantics, but okay. So okay. I mean, what do you think the difference is?
I don't think there is much of a difference. I mean, I have a quick course that I do called The Art of Differentiation, because knowing that I've always been different and always had to do things differently, because if I wanted to excel, I had to do it that way. It's just how it worked out for me. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's my own doing. It probably was, but I know that, like, for instance, I mentioned earlier that I'm a bit blunt with things, right? I'm sorry, that's the way it is. No one questions that they're ever going to worry about what I mean, what I feel, and where I'm coming from, right? That's my differentiating point, right? But in a sales situation where nobody knows you, you have to like take that a little bit different on a different skew. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know if there's a difference between creativity and cleverness, but I think there's a difference between being creative for good and being creative for bad. Like you can weaponize creativity. That's the example, right? Like you could, you know, like there's so many books. I'm sure there's still a lot of real estate agents that practice the art of mirroring. Okay, like
yes. And truth be told, I finished a course a couple months ago on NLP.
It was, and listen, like we've all seen and done whatever the training of the generation is, right? I mean, like you have to keep up with the innovation, and then you have to make a decision on if this is aligned morally, right? Like with me, like is this manipulation, or is this something that I'm proud of? And then depending on how you sell yourself on that, you'll end up in this situation where you'll either show up as the real one, right, that you're talking about, Dave, or you'll show up like you're acting like someone else.
Right.
We have found the mirroring thing is really interesting, just as one example, because, you know, if you're ever in a situation like as a customer and you find out that someone's mirroring you, it's like, what the, right? Are you Are you intentionally crossing your leg because I'm crossing my leg? And you think about like the book that was written, because the book that was written was really simple. It was, hey, great salespeople are so engaged that they're actually mirroring the people that they're talking to. So we're going to teach you how to mirror people. And Garrett and I, we wanted to write the book that was like, let us show you why these great salespeople are so damn engaged that they actually mirror on accident. And so when you think about like creativity, getting creative on how you show up so engaged that the natural byproduct of your engagement is to like lean in when they're leaned in because you're on a vibe versus the weaponization of creativity for this example, which is when you lean in, I'm going to lean in. Maybe that's the difference between clever and creative. That's a stretch, but I'm doing that for you. I do think I like it. I just don't know what it is yet.
No, I get that 100%. I mean, I remember that from the book about the mirroring thing and how, you know what, it's been taught to me. As I said, I took a full huge course on neuro-linguistic programming, which involves mirroring. It involves different words and how you say them and everything else. So, you know, I guess that's a sales technique, you know.
I'll just say the last thing on that is it just depends on how you consume the information. If you consume it like a learner versus a knower, and then that whole other Garrett, sorry, I cut you off.
No, I'm basically going to say the same thing, which is there's nothing wrong with sales techniques. It's really like, it's about the intention. And if your intent is to pull one over on somebody and get them to change their mind on something that maybe they shouldn't change their mind on, you know, that's weaponizing it versus, you know, I do know that if I do this or say this, I'm going to be able to get this message across that's going to genuinely improve this person's life. Like there is a difference between that. There's nothing wrong with sales techniques. There is a lot wrong with weaponizing them for evil as opposed to using them for good.
Oh, absolutely. Like, just, you know, it's a matter of being you. I think authenticity is the word and the way to look at it. I want to get into one other subject before we finish today. And it was I got to tell you that the reason that I love this chapter was the end of it when you talked about that Paul McCartney and the Beatles didn't know how to read or write music. I never knew that. And I've always considered myself, you know, knowing a lot about the Beatles. I was around when they were around. I know it doesn't look that way, but you know, but intentional ignorance, ignorance. Talk to me about that. About, you know, we talk to agents and tell them we don't want you to know much about anything. We just want you to get involved and ask the right questions, and that question is being authentic and talking to the person. Talk to me about intentional ignorance.
I'll go and I'll kick it off to Garrett. It's actually about Garrett. One day during the book writing process, Garrett was telling me about one of his favorite quotes, like way before the book writing process, but we were writing intentional ignorance. And it was a Ray Lewis quote. And it said, Ray Lewis said, they pay me for what I do Monday to Saturday, but Sundays are free, right? Sundays are my pleasure. And it was just such a fascinating concept, because if you took a step back and you thought about the parts of your job that you love so much that you would do for free, right? Not saying you would actually do them for free. Right. Margot, my wife, don't worry. That's not what I'm talking about. She's not in the room. I don't even know why I'm looking over there.
True performer.
I'm just looking over my shoulder all the time when I'm talking about doing anything for free. No, I'm kidding. Anyways, so what were we talking about? God.
Ray Lewis.
So Garrett tells me this quote, and it just changes our entire perspective on intentional ignorance. Because intentional ignorance could be seen as just trying to intentionally ignore the parts of your job that you're not passionately authentic about, or that you're not authentically passionate about, and letting someone else do that, right? Like own your dharma so you can let someone else own theirs. Like that, that at the baseline is what it is. But when you factor in the Ray Lewis quote, what intentional ignorance forces you to do is focus on the parts of the job that you would do for free. Right? Like the stuff, like if you could acknowledge and define and start to segment the pieces of your work that you love, then the parts of the job that you are getting paid for, that you have to get paid for, that you even have to do, you know, you have that muscle memory where you'll start to look for the parts of the job that you don't like. You'll start to look for what you do love, even in that job. And so imagine like creating like a culture where what people love doing and what they get paid for are the same thing. Because a lot of times, even in real estate, like a lot of people are getting paid for what they're good at, not for what they love doing. So within the real estate piece, are there, for this example, are there areas where like you couldn't pay me enough money, right? Like I will do this for free. I would be solving this problem for this family, even if I wasn't getting paid for it. I'd be having this conversation with them.
Right.
Versus, yeah, you got to write me a check for that. And like, can you find people around you and create a team where there's someone next to you where they would do that part for free? Because that's when like you really start to see like these high functioning, high sales IQ teams. So that's my intentional ignorance, Ray Lewis. I'll pass it to you, Garrett, for more of a practical approach.
I love that we're finishing with this because it's the perfect full circle. Like we started this conversation talking about the fact that great sellers don't do what they're expected to do and what they're supposed to do. And in our minds, for most people, the image of a perfect seller has all the answers. And they know everything about their product, or they know everything about the house they're selling or the neighborhood that they're selling it in, or whatever the case may be. But as we interviewed all of these successful people, we realized that they didn't feel the need to even know everything. They just needed to know where to find those answers, because they knew that if they were passionate about home building or they were passionate about the neighborhood, then they were going to have a great conversation. They were going to light up and they were going to talk to their customer and they were going to sound different and they were going to be excited, and that excitement was going to transfer. But if they had to talk about something that they weren't excited about, maybe they didn't know much about this neighborhood because it's a place where they haven't sold before and they're not big on research, they would intentionally ignore that and go find somebody who did know. Maybe it was a former client of theirs or somebody else in their agency or whatever the case may be, who would light up on that. And so they just realized that by not doing what they were supposed to do, by not having all the answers, they would be able to show up differently and show up about the things that they're knowledgeable about, that they're excited about, and not have to pretend and be somebody they're not.
And how do you show up as a learner and not a knower? By intentionally not having all the answers. Like, what happens when someone asks you a question and you say, I don't know, but I do know someone that does have the answers. Let me go and find out for you. Like, we were hearing salespeople tell us that they were getting more credit for being resourceful and going out and fighting for and finding answers than always having the answers. So, yeah.
Right. I feel, when it talks about just example of that, I feel that if someone comes to me with the answers and I've always given the answers, I feel kind of lost almost, because I'm not the shell answer man. That's a phrase from years ago, but I don't know everything. I know that I can help and I know I can get the answers. It's like, there's a lot of people in this world that consider themselves a fixer, right? I'm a fixer. I can get an answer if I need one, right? If I don't have the answer, I'll get it. If I have a problem, I can solve it. Some ain't easy, right? But it goes back to the idea of, first intentional ignorance, then going back to the creative part. How creative are you going to be when you don't have an answer, and who are you going to call to get it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and also it's also tied to being on the same team. Like, we haven't seen a faster way for a salesperson and a prospect to get on the same team than calling somebody else in and asking them a question from the same side of the table as the customer. Because if you bring someone else in, like if I'm bringing you in as an expert in commercial real estate, even though like I'm the residential person, just hypothetically, right? And I have my prospect here who's like has a question about commercial for some reason, zoning next to a residential, let's just say. This is a horrible analogy. Someone understands.
No, it's good. It's good.
I'm sitting here with my prospect. I bring in the expert in commercial. It's not me and the expert on one side and the customer on the other side of the table. Me and the customer have a question for you, commercial zoning expert. We want to know, right? Like, immediately we are on the same team because you entered into the picture. So now, like, I can move my chair around the proverbial table. I realize it's 1 minute to the hour. Sorry for that.
No, we're fine. I just want. You just went into something I really wanted to ask you about. In my notes is being a teammate, not a coach, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it is so true when you're working with someone, whether it's a customer, a coworker, coach, to a client, mentor, mentee, working alongside them, I think is one of the most important things that anyone can do to help someone else. It's like People say they get in this business because I like homes or I want to help people, right? The way to help people is side by side and being a teammate, as you said. You guys agree with that?
100%. It's such a subtle mindset shift, but it changes the hierarchy. Like there is a time and a place for a coach, and when somebody's going to tell you this is what you need to do. But when in a sales situation, in a business situation, in a partnership situation, we're not looking for somebody to coach and tell us this is how you do it. We're looking for a teammate. And we didn't have time. We're out of time now, but so I guess people will have to get the book after all. But to talk about agency, which is one of our favorite words, and agency in the sense that feeling in control of your own decisions and your own circumstances. But when somebody's telling you you need to do this, you don't have control over that decision. Whereas if you've got a teammate who's in it together, who has skin in the game, who's saying, hey, if we do this, this is going to be good in these ways. And if we don't do this, it's going to be bad in these ways. That's a teammate who's giving you agency, who's giving you control over that decision. And that's a gift when it comes to selling.
Yeah. My parting words on that is for anyone listening is that people will say no to you because you're right. Don't ever forget that.
Yeah.
People will say no to you. You have all the answers.
A couple more things, guys. And I'm going to end with something I always lead off with, but I forgot. But for one question I have two questions, a comment and another comment. First question is, what advice would you guys give to a struggling real estate agent that needs to make money quickly? I'm not asking you how. I'm saying from the unsold mindset perspective.
Yeah. Fall in love with the idea of who your customer could be.
And I'll say, celebrate the process. Rewind this broadcast about 45 minutes and celebrate the process. Excellent.
So one comment I got to make for my last question is, at the beginning of the broadcast, I always ask guys a question, and I forgot today. I was so excited about this broadcast. This is called Real Estate Talk TGIF. I didn't ask you guys what TGIF stand for. That's a question I ask everybody. So I've got to ask you guys, what does TGIF stand for?
Literally, or in our I'm so curious how other people answer this question.
It's a really simple way on this broadcast.
Well, in the literal sense, I and Colin to a certain extent too. I won't speak for you, Colin, but I love Fridays, and I engineer them to have as few scheduled calls and events as possible, because I want to, if I'm grooving and I want to keep working, I can. And if I want to cut out early and spend some time with my kids who happen to be on the first day of summer vacation today, I can, and I will today. So for me, right, it's just sort of, Colin and I love what we do. So every day is a day that we look forward to. But since other people have this concept of a weekend, by extending our Friday, by making it a kind of a lighter day, that gives me the ability to spend time with the people I love a little extra towards the end of the week.
I'm gonna give you a little bit of it's a little different answer than you're expecting. It's really simple. Some people think it's thank God it's Friday. I say thank God it's finale. That's me, and so that's why I use that. There's a little joke there.
I'll give you the literal answer. Thank goodness it's Friday.
There you go.
You shouldn't. I'm glad I didn't answer it, because I had a whole tangent we were going to be on. So
guys, I have one last question for you, and that is, how do I help you guys grow your business, do the book, whatever? How do I help you? How do I do that for you?
Well, by sharing the book with everybody, you've already done that. So we appreciate it. If anybody out there is watching and listening and wants to find us, we love hearing from people online. We're on Twitter and Instagram at Colin and Garrett. It looks like it's right there on the screen. We're also on LinkedIn. And then colinandgarrett.com is where people can sign up to get emails from us and learn about all the stuff that we're up to together. So we would love to hear from folks and hope that you all enjoyed this conversation and enjoy the book if you read it.
Awesome. And guys, as you know, the reason you guys came on was to get the hat, right? You talked about it earlier. The hat's going to come out to you. Make sure I have your email addresses, your addresses and stuff. And everybody, I want to thank you all for coming. Next week, we've got the great Bill Pipes coming on as our special guest, probably the #1 sales coach in the world. Well, he is the #1 sales coach in the world, and I'm glad to call him friend. Guys, thank you so much. If you just stay on for a second, we'll be right back. Hey, everybody, thanks again. We'll see you next week. Thanks a lot. Go to the tape. All right. Hey, guys, I hope that was good for you. I hope you enjoyed.